So far, 2019 has not been a good year for the left. The worldwide nationalist populist movement shows no sign of slowing down, and European peoples continue to wake up to what globalism is doing to us. Here in Australia, Fraser Anning is sending shockwaves through the political establishment. His new political party, the Conservative National Party, had 1,000 paid members in the first day. As of mid-April, rumours are membership is a lot higher than that, but the party is yet to announce the official number. Since announcing himself to the Australian political scene in the middle of 2018, the establishment has run desperate defence, denouncing him for daring to represent real Australians. The parasitic establishment slammed him for attending a rally of patriotic Australians standing up against African gang violence running rampant in Victoria. They even complained that he used taxpayer money to do his job as an elected representative. Most recently, the parasitic establishment decided that telling the truth about issues was too much to bear, and they all voted to call Fraser a very naughty boy for highlighting contributing causes to the Christchurch incident. Telling the truth truly is revolutionary in the current year. The louder they denounce him, the more popular he gets. He refuses to apologise, and Australians love him for it. He is simply the result of a wide and growing movement throughout Australia. This movement is now getting special attention from the far left, as to them it represents a truly existential threat. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Matty Rose Live and tune in to my weekly live stream with editor of the XYZ, David Hiscox, where we discuss all the biggest news of the week. We go live every Monday at about 9:15 Australian Eastern Time. Can't wait to see you there, link in the description. Australia's growing nationalist populist movement is sending far-left activists into panic mode. The usual attacks of racist no longer work, and this scares them. One such far-left activist is Alex Mann, who's taken very special notice of those he deems on the far right, whatever that means in the current year.
Because it's 2015.
Mannlet describes himself as an investigative journalist for ABC's Background Briefing, proving once again that what the ABC calls journalism, most normal people call dishonest propaganda. Mr. Mannlet is extra triggered about the rising nationalist movement in Australia, and when he's not sharing propaganda on Twitter, he's writing his own. His first attempt at uncovering the so-called dark truth within Australia's growing nationalist movement came in October of 2018 from the ABC, and I quote, "The ABC has uncovered a covert plot by Australia's alt-right movement to join major political parties and influence their policy agendas from within. Background Briefing has witnessed members of the New South Wales Young Nationals in Sydney attending a secret men's-only fight club set up by some of the country's most prominent alt-right nationalists. The program has also gained access to a private Facebook group in which these same people discuss their manifesto, which includes plans to shake up mainstream politics. At least 3 New South Wales Young Nationals, including Clifford Jennings, who sits on the executive of the party's youth wing, are or recently have been members." End quote. In other words, people he doesn't like are trying to get into politics. The horror of it all. Mr. Mannlet seems to think that politics is only for people he agrees with. Those who love their country need not apply. The irony of this is he spoke to one of the Young Nationals who showed that radical political views already infest the party.
The party has, in the past, been outspoken on progressive or liberal issues.
My family has a farm up in the Northern Tablelands, and when I did join, I was pleased to see that actually there's quite a progressive voice in the Young National Party.
New South Wales Young Nationals recently voted for marriage equality increasing the cap for Syrian refugees, and an emissions intensity scheme. So that to you said that, okay, there's a bit more room in this party for ideas other than the sort of stereotypes of country people and country conservatives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really breaking out of that stereotype, exactly.
For those who don't know, the Nationals sell themselves as a right-of-centre party who represent the interests of the Australian regional community. What background briefing actually exposed is the fact that far-left communists, who call themselves progressive, have fully infiltrated and taken over the youth wing of their party. In a sane world, this would result in immediate expulsion of every single communist. In clown world, this kind of political subversion goes completely unpunished. Worse, it is outright rewarded. Rather than expel the communist infiltrators, the Nationalists showed their true colours and expelled those trying to take the party back from them. Acts like this wake people up to the true agenda of the party, and recent New South Wales election results saw the Nationals lose 3 lower house seats. The Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party picked up 2 of them. When you fail to represent the people will remove you from power. The lesson here is clear, but don't expect the mainstream parties to listen. The traditionally centre-right Liberal National Coalition is now essentially indistinguishable from the socialist left ALP and the communist left Greens Party. There is no reason to vote for them if you genuinely love your country, but I digress. Accidentally exposing the communist infiltration of the Young Nationals was only the first stage of Mr. Mannlet's love affair with the nationalist movement. He gained a number of followers from his first foray into anti-Australianism, and he wanted more. Desperate for clicks, he drew the longest bow since the French charged the English on the 25th of October 1415, and it was equally as idiotic. From the ABC, and I quote, 3 years before the mass shooting in Christchurch, Brenton Tarrant was lavishing praise on prominent Australian far-right nationalist Blair Cottrell, referring to him as Emperor. The ABC's background briefing has uncovered an archive of comments from the accused mosque shooter, which were posted on the now deleted Facebook pages of Australian far-right groups United Patriots Front and True Blue Crew. Although the shooter claimed in a manifesto uploaded before the attack that he was never a member of any group, the archive verified by background briefing reveals an allegiance to a number of high-profile Australian far-right figures. And while specific details remain murky, these revelations about Tarrant's interactions with domestic far-right groups shed light on a young man captivated by white nationalism and its high-profile figurehead, Mr. Cottrell. End quote. This is a blatant attempt at slandering Cottrell and other groups through guilt by association. A bad person once praised them, therefore they are bad too. Tarrant also praised Pakistan and China. Are those countries also guilty of his crime? If someone praised Mr. Mannlet, then went on a shooting spree, would Mr. Mannlet equally claim it meant anything meaningful? Of course he wouldn't, because that would be ridiculous. Just as this article is a ridiculous piece of slander disguised as journalism. The best part of the article is about halfway through, and I quote, although there are no screenshots of his comments on the UPF and TBC pages, Background Briefing has verified their authenticity by comparing the archive's preserved metadata, including Facebook ID numbers and timestamps, against other public posts shared by UPF and TBC supporters. This allowed us to connect names to comments. End quote. So all they have is supposed metadata that apparently shows Tarrant once posted on the UPF and TBC Facebook pages. They likely have no real evidence to back up their claim, and even if they did, it wouldn't mean a thing. It also begs the question, how did they come about this supposed metadata? And did they acquire it legally? If this is what passes for investigative journalism at the ABC and the mainstream media in general, it's no wonder people are switching off. Similar to this nonsense, Mannlet enthusiastically shared stories about Austrian white advocate Martin Sellner after authorities discovered Brenton Tarrant donated to him once. This isn't surprising given his tenuous grip on logical reasoning and his ability to pretend someone is guilty by the loosest possible association. If the ABC actually respected journalistic integrity, not to mention logical reasoning, they would reprimand Mannlet for such lunacy. But alas, the ABC itself is little more than taxpayer-funded propaganda for the extreme left. The most recent piece of whining from Mr. Mannlet at the time of writing takes direct aim at the man himself, Fraser Anning. And I quote, "Leaked messages have revealed the Australian alt-right's secret plan to use Queensland Senator Fraser Anning to expand his extreme agenda in the Australian Parliament and beyond. The texts seen by Background Briefing offer a rare insight into the strategy the movement intends to use to further its goals and spread its ideology. Members of the group are seen discussing plans for confrontational racist stunts to be performed during the current federal election campaign. The proposed stunts, designed to attract global attention and help Senator Anning get re-elected, include performing blackface and other taboos and burning the Quran. Another stated goal is obtaining and accessing a giant email and SMS database in order to send messages that are extremely right-wing." End quote. As with his slanderous piece on Blair Cottrell and the UPF, Alex Mann provides no actual evidence of any text message sent, nor would it matter even if he did. While this story is more plausible, as it's simply political strategists discussing legitimate strategy, he still tells us to take his word for it. Given the ABC's hatred of nationalism, there is absolutely no reason to do this. It's also interesting that Mannlet considers the ideas of Liberal Party founder and longest serving Prime Minister Robert Menzies and Australia's founding father Henry Parkes to be extreme. After all, this is where Fraser Anning stands in terms of his politics. It seems Alex is projecting just a little bit, given his extremist anti-white and anti-Australian views. The irony in this story being the far left have used radical propaganda techniques for decades, if not centuries now. Only they've managed to take over the entire establishment. Think pushing gay marriage, venerating single motherhood, and not to mention the radical anti-nature, anti-God idea known as multiculturalism. One could describe it as avalanche after avalanche of anti-white, anti-West propaganda. They subverted tradition and attracted attention to societal taboos, making them acceptable within the common discourse. The difference being, the left want to destroy our civilization, whereas the nationalist movement seeks to restore it. Also of note is the article includes a picture that describes some of the text messages leaked. Interesting because of what they omitted from the article itself. One of the strategies devised is, quote, setting up an anti-white hate reporting website where people can file complaints under ethnic crime, such as African gangs, or any anti-white discrimination suffered in the workplace, end quote. That is a great idea. No wonder Mannlet didn't mention it in the article. Bringing attention to the very real issue of anti-whiteism in Australia wouldn't help the far left agenda. The best part of this article is when he calls the Trump hater who shot up the Tree of Life synagogue a far-right terrorist group. These days, even one nutcase can be a group according to the left. Slandering nationalism with the acts of individuals is part and parcel of left-wing propaganda. Alex Mann isn't the only one triggered by the rise of Australia's traditionalist populist movement. There are a number of groups upset at the push to return to the principles of the nation's founding. Angry communist Antifa supporting soy boy Andy Fleming, otherwise known as Slack Bastard, recently made a comprehensive rundown of the entire movement, likely as a way, in his or her mind, to expose it. But all he or she has really done is show everyone just how big this movement really is. Link in the description. Ultra far left tabloid rag The Guardian also recently gave their brain virus infected fans a video rundown of the nationalist movement. It shamelessly attempts to connect the wider movement to the actions of Brenton Tarrant. Remember, according to the left, when a Muslim attacks whites, we can't blame all Muslims, but when a nationalist attacks Muslims, it's all nationalists' fault. The Sydney Morning Herald recently took aim at Gab for allowing freedom of speech. The last thing the left wants is a free and open debate. If that were ever to happen, they would lose, and it wouldn't even be close. News of Australia's growing nationalist movement even made it all the way to the United States. Make no mistake, the parasitic establishment are worried and are lashing out in all directions. Men like Fraser Anning represent a very real threat to their cultural dominance. If the wider community were ever to lose their fear of speaking their mind, that would mean the end of cultural Marxist hegemony. The thing parasites fear the most is exposure, and the way to expose cultural parasitism is by calling it out with truthful speech. Moves to silence and defame the nationalist movement betray this fear. If left-wing ideas were stronger, the parasites would call for debate. The fact that they demand censorship as opposed to discussion is proof they have no confidence in their ideas and are scared of losing power and influence. As they say, slander is the tool of the loser. Regardless of Fraser Anning's future in Australian politics, this movement is real and it is growing. We will take our nations back one way or another because God wills it. I hope you enjoyed the video, share the truth around, and I'll see ya when I see ya.